Well, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. We're going to give some attendees a little bit more time here, probably about 30 to 45 more seconds to join in, and then we will get started. So give us another 30 seconds to let people come in. Okay, looks like we've got the number of attendees coming in flattening out here, so I think we're in good shape to get started. My name is JB Fowler. I am in charge of some of the product here at Domotz. We try to do a demo for you guys every 2 weeks, a live demo. Do a couple things. One, just to give you an idea of how things work, how Domotz works in general, as well as show you some of the features of Domotz. And then at the end, we talk about a couple of the new features that are on our roadmaps and things that you'll see. I'm actually excited to show some good features that we've introduced in the last couple of weeks, because there's some good things that I think a lot of folks will like. Before we get into the nitty gritty, let's go over a couple of housekeeping items. Always like to show this because of the way GoToWebinar works. You know, you can listen on your phone, you can listen on your computer. If you're having audio problems, I recommend you switch back and forth. That will usually fix the issue. The other thing that I want to say is, please feel free to ask us questions. While we are doing a broadcast, because of the large number of people that are on here and everybody's muted, we do try to answer your questions in real time as they come in. We've got a team standing by to help answer questions, and so they will, they'll get back to you ASAP. And then if we get a lot of the same type of questions, usually Giancarlo will chime in and we'll try to address that question live. If anything, at the end of the session, we will also talk about some of the Q&A that popped up. A few things to note for the agenda today. We're going to go over the general functionality of Domotz. As I mentioned, our team is standing by both on the sales as well as on the support side to help answer any questions. And then, as always, I really like to get feedback both on what you're seeing within the webinar. If you have any suggestions, by all means, please type that into the questions area. And then the last thing I want to say, and I'm going to mention this again, but if you guys are familiar with Domotz, by all means, let us know what you like about Domotz. Let us know what other tools you use that we should integrate with, and put those comments in the question section as well. We always appreciate that. That being said, Jordan, I think we have a poll here that we can show. So go ahead and get that up. Close this down while we're doing that poll. This poll really tries to help us get a better understanding of who's attending right now. It helps us with respect to how we target some of the message that we're doing. So feel free to respond to that poll while I'm speaking a little bit about some of the core values of Domotz. You know, fundamentally, Domotz is a tool for you guys as a service provider, as an integrator, as an installer, as a dealer, whatever it is you may call yourself. What we want to do is help you run your business more efficiently. We want to help you eliminate truck rolls. We want to help you understand what's going on at one of your customer sites before you go out there. So that's a fundamental core value of what Domotz does. It really is meant to help provide you with operational efficiency. The other thing that we do is we really want to make you look like a hero to your customers. We really try to get away from a break-fix model and allow you to do what we call proactive monitoring. The idea behind this is we want you to know that something is wrong in a system before you guys get that phone call from your customer. If you can know what's going on, if you can solve the problem before your customer ever knew that there was an issue, it really does make you look like a hero. The other thing that it can help you do is it can help satisfy SLAs, right? Service level agreements that you may have in place with your customers. So hopefully you'll see through the demonstration today the real value of what Domotz is. It looked like we had about 50% of our customers as service providers that were out there. This next poll is really to understand, have you used us before? Do you consider yourself a power user? Yeah, you've never seen it. Just let us know that as well. So, and while that's going on, let me give you a little bit of idea about how Domotz works. Fundamentally, what you see on the screen here is the Domotz application. We've got a couple different types of applications. We've got the desktop application that runs on Mac, which is what I'm showing you here today. You also have a Windows-based application. You can do a web-based application. So if you are using a browser, whether it's Safari, Chrome, Internet Explorer, whatever your favorite browser is, you can use a browser. And then you also have the ability to use Domotz through a mobile app. The mobile app, the desktop application, these are all ways in which you basically communicate with the Domotz agents and through our cloud services. Speaking of that, the cloud service, Domotz fundamentally is a cloud-based service. A lot of people ask where we are hosted. We are hosted with AWS. To go into a little bit more detail, Domotz is a worldwide based service. We have thousands of service providers that use Domotz across the world. I'd tell you about 70% of our business is in North America, where we have a dedicated Amazon Web Services cell, as we call it. And then we have an Amazon Web Services cell also in Europe. It's hosted in the Ireland area to be able to take advantage of or deal with regulatory requirements like GDPR and such that really covers the rest of the world. The reason that we pride ourselves on being a cloud-based service is so that you can have access, rapid access to your customer systems from anywhere in the world that you happen to be. The third component of the Domotz service, besides the application and besides the cloud itself, has to do with these dots. These are essentially the agents that run on the local network. There is a single agent, it's called a network agent, that is hosted or that is sitting inside the agent that you're monitoring or that you're monitoring and managing. Different types of network agents can be implemented. We've got Windows-based agents. We've got Linux-based agents. You can host an agent on embedded hardware. So we have our agent embedded on certain types of routers. You can put an agent on a Raspberry Pi. You can even put, purchase a black box through Amazon or one of our partners, and the Domotz agent natively runs on that. There are some advantages with respect to the black box when it comes to updatability and how Domotz can help provision the system. But fundamentally, there are many different ways that you can deploy one of these agents. One of the most commonly used one is the Windows-based agent, and you will find that today we now have, and I just want to make a mention of this, in our beta community, a new agent that's out there that is a pure executable that's out there. So check that out. Go to our community.domotz.com and you can see that. So let's talk a little bit about how the system works now. So I've been on this screen for a while and you've been seeing that. Domotz in the application fundamentally is a NOC, a network operations center type of tool. It's a very multi-tenant tool. So you can see all the agents of all your different clients that are deployed across the world or within a region that you're in. You'll notice on the left-hand side, there's the list of agents. Very simple type of view, red, yellow, green status. Red means that the agent itself is offline. What that fundamentally means is that the agent is no longer communicating with the Domotz cloud service. Could be because of a power outage. It could be because the ISP is down. It could be because somebody unplugged a cable, right? But fundamentally, you can't communicate with it. And either somebody is going to hard power cycle that or reboot the system, or it's a truck roll, right? There's just nothing that can be done about that. When things are green, really everything's running as expected. It means all of the systems that Domotz is monitoring appear to be operating as normal and functioning the way you expect. It really gets interesting when something turns yellow. This is when we start to see important devices that are offline, or we see security issues in the system. So this multi-tenant view gives you a really a high-level overview of all of your clients and their sites and what's going on. When you dive down into a particular agent, we get outside of that multi-tenant view, and this is where a lot of the magic starts to happen. You get a dashboard and insight as to what's going on within that system, primarily at a network-based level, but we'll talk about some of the integrations that we do with different partners that give you a bit of a different view. Let's fundamentally talk about what Domotz does when you first instantiate it. So when you activate an agent, whether it's a software-based agent or it's a black box or it's an embedded agent, when you associate that agent to your account, the very first thing that we do is we start to do a network scan. We do essentially a layer 2 scan which you can think about it as a way to discover all of the MAC addresses that are associated with the LAN that we are scanning. A lot of people will ask us questions about VLANs and subnets. I'm going to tell you absolutely, we definitely can configure VLANs and look at multiple VLANs. You of course need to make sure that not only is the Domotz agent configured to look at the different VLAN tags, but you also need to make sure that the managed switch, which is ultimately managing those VLANs, is set up so that the port that the Domotz agent is on can also pass the VLAN tags appropriately. For subnets, which is more of a layer 3 technology, you absolutely can scan different subnets and see devices. But the beauty of doing layer 2 VLAN scans like we do is the fact that we take advantage of our FING database. FING allows us to look at the MAC addresses. The MAC address would be something of this nature here, and then associate that with make, model, and types of devices. The nice thing about this, and let's go find a normal device here, like a camera. So the nice thing about looking at a camera or any type of device is we not only show you the MAC address, but then we go up to layer 3, discover the IP address, and then using FING, we also start to discover all of the application layer information. In this particular device, you can see it's broadcasting bonjour, there's 0conf, their host names being broadcast. This type of information is stuff that Domotz will automatically populate under each device. The idea behind this is how can we help you better understand all the devices that are on the network and what they're doing and how they're behaving. The very next thing that Domotz will do after we've discovered all of the devices on this particular LAN or subnet is we start to look at which ports are available, which software ports or management ports are available on that device for us to be able to connect to via software. In this particular device, you'll see there's port 80 and port 8000, both are web portals, but we'll discover things like SSH, Telnet. For PCs, laptops, and servers, if RDP is enabled, we'll discover RDP and show you that. All of these are ways in which Domotz now starts to not only discover what we can monitor, but also how you can manage those types of devices in the network. One of the things that I want to point out here, and this is sometimes a feature that people didn't realize, so I always like to point this out, and I think it's a pretty cool feature. When you're on this devices list page and you're using the Domotz desktop application, whether it's Windows or Mac, you're given this ability to export all the devices that Domotz has discovered. The nice thing about this, in fact, we'll just save this file off here, and let me go to my, I believe it's this one. So I'm going to bring up an Excel file. What has happened is that Domotz has essentially captured every single device that's on there, all the information associated with those devices, and provided it in an Excel format that you can export. This is great for inventory management. More importantly, if you guys want to make a large number of changes to a particular system, you can filter all of these devices. I always like to filter on the cameras. It's just nice and easy to show. We can filter all the cameras that are in the system, and then we can go make the necessary changes all within an Excel file. So if I wanted to change all of these from true as importance to false, I could do that. I could then save it and then re-upload that to the agent, and then all of the changes are made at kind of a mass level. If I wanted to make notes on particular devices, you certainly could put, not that we recommend it, but you could put passwords or you could put usernames or any details about those particular devices directly in here too. So this is a fairly powerful tool, and I like to show that so that people understand how the system works there. So once we have discovered all the devices, looked at what can be managed, we take it a step further. And in this particular environment, we start to look for managed switches that are in the network. Why do we do that? Well, we want to understand which devices are connected to which ports of the switch. So we interrogate these managed switches through services like SNMP. SNMP, Domotz will take and look at about 13 different sensors within a managed switch to give you all these details that I'm showing here on this page. For instance, we know the name of the device, its MAC address, for instance, but now we can see exactly which port it's connected to. We can see when it's a PoE device, how much power is being consumed. We can power cycle it. We can look at the bandwidth of a particular device and see how that bandwidth is tracked over time as seen from the switch. I mean, here's a great example where you can see, looks like it was within the last 7 days, that we had some issues, right? The system went down. In fact, I know exactly what happened during that time, but because we did have some power outages, and that's why that ended up going down for a little bit. You can look at errors, discarded packets that may be occurring. Hopefully on a wired LAN, you're not getting that, but if you look at things like trunk ports and such, you'll see that that sometimes errors and packets are being discarded because of the sheer bandwidth going across the switch. These are all extremely useful tools for you to better understand what's going on inside the network. With all of this, we go back out, you'll see that we can build an actual network topology map. So we can understand from the internet, from the router that's out there or the firewall, how all of these devices are actually configured inside this network. All of this is being done for you automatically. What's really cool is that we start to look at things like wireless access points as well. We can see for particular access points such as Ruckus, Ubiquiti, Cisco Meraki are great examples. Access Networks is another one where we can start to look at exactly which devices are connected to which APs. We can look at things like which SSIDs these devices are connected to, which radios they're connected to, what channels are they on. We can look at things like what are their signal strengths of these particular devices. So this is all information that Domotz gathers directly from these network infrastructure devices. Another thing that you see, and I usually like to pick on wireless devices because it shows variability. But this thing here, this graph that you see, round trip delay, this is something that Domotz does, where again, this is helping you as an installer or as a service provider better understand what's going on with devices in the network. What we want to be able to do is give you an idea of the round trip delay from the Domotz agent to that particular device. Round trip delay, if it stays fixed or static, is generally not an issue. But when you see it varying over time, that's when it can be a problem, especially for voice over IP systems, audio distribution systems, or even video distribution systems, unified communication platforms, for instance. Those can be an issue if you have variability in the network. So a lot of times as people are plugging in more and more things to a network switch, depending on the type of data that's coming across those ports, it can affect latency in a significant way. This is a great tool. Domotz is a great tool to be able to help you better understand how the network is changing and what's going on there. Speaking of network switches, this is one of the things. I'm going to back out of this particular agent and I'm going to go to this agent. This is something I'm super excited to be able to show you guys this year or this week. Last time I had to open up these images over here, but now I can go to Cisco and our main switch and I can show you this really awesome feature that we do within switches. Right now, you see this with Cisco Catalyst and you see this with Cisco SG series, but we're continuing to add more and more switches. But it's the ability to do configuration management. What you see here is Domotz, when we discover that we have a Cisco switch and you've given us the credentials for that switch, what we do is we will pull the configuration files. We will look at both the running configuration and we will look at the startup configuration. And then we will do a check to see, one, are they aligned? In this particular example and for this demo, you'll see that we actually have a configuration misalignment. If we select that, what we see is that the runtime configuration that's out there, something has changed on this from what we had in the startup config, right? And just for examples, we showed this particular difference here. But now you know, okay, somebody went and made a change to the runtime configuration and they didn't save it to the startup configuration. Therefore, we flag this as a misalignment. We can alert you to this to let you know that this issue is there. Another thing that we do, we will pull the running configuration file on a periodic basis, and we will see if it has changed from a previous running configuration file, even if it was saved if the startup was saved. If there is a difference, we will save that new configuration off, we will timestamp it, and then you have the ability to look at differences between these particular files. Okay, so you can see what happened in the configuration file. Ultimately, this is to help you guys better understand what's going on inside the network and troubleshoot any diagnostic issues that come up. We think that this is extremely powerful for you as a service provider, and we think that it really gives you good insight to what's going on in the network and alerting to when something changes, especially if you're the owner of these switches from your client's perspective. If somebody's getting in there and doing something with it, you need to know about it. We can generate alerts on that.
I'm really glad you are finally showing this on live, GB, and we have the network there. It's very good. Actually, we received already some question about that. How can I do backup configuration files for my network devices like switches or even firewall or router or access point? So what you showed now is basically the backup and versioning of those configuration files for the switches, the Cisco switches. As you mentioned, we will add more and more brands. We will add more and more network devices like firewall to do the same. Yes. One thing to mention is that also, I mean, the user, the managed service provider, has also the possibility to push a new configuration file. So you edit the file on your own and you push a new configuration file, or right, you can restore a previous version. So you mentioned that the technician might receive an alert that something has changed and now something is not working anymore. What they can do is to look at what has changed and they can restore a previous working file. That's very, very good. Thanks for sharing that, JP.
Yeah, appreciate it, Giancarlo, and thanks for chiming in on that. This brings up a subject that I mentioned at the very beginning, but I wanna iterate this again, and that is, you know, here we are integrating with Cisco and showing this type of integration. The question always comes up around firewalls and who do we integrate, who do we work with. By all means, our system, our architecture works really well with web-based configuration systems for firewalls and even web pages that are on these systems. Let us know which firewalls you're using. Take advantage of that questions window and let us know what integrations are needed from a hardware perspective. But we're going to start getting into some software integration stuff too. Let us know what tools you guys are using, what PSA tools, right? What other RMM tools are you using so that we can make sure that we're effectively integrated with those. So I just wanted to bring that comment in while Giancarlo mentioned that, it reminded me. So good, Giancarlo, if anything else comes up, let me know here. Let's talk a little bit, let's kind of step away from this network infrastructure discussion and the monitoring of the devices. And we're going to talk about alerting here soon, but first I want to talk about management of devices. So as I had stated, when we discover any devices on the network, in fact, I'll go to those switches that are here. So I mentioned that we provide this Connect tab that shows us things like SSH, Telnet, port 80, port 443, the different ports that are used for management. There's a couple different ways in which you can get inside a particular switch or a device that's on the network, any device that's on the network, as long as they have these either console or web portal capabilities. When we discover these and you want to make a secure connection, if we hit the connect button, what we see is, in fact, let me bring up the web page because it automatically brought this up. You'll see a couple things. First of all, Domotz created a secure connection between my laptop and our cloud services on Amazon, but then it also made a second secure and newly encrypted connection between Amazon Web Services and the agent itself. And you can see some of this by looking at the URL that's provided up here with this unique key. That's unique to my laptop here in the office. If I put in my super secret passwords here and then hit login, right, you'll see that I get directly connected to that device's web page. In this case, it's a Luxel managed switch. And at this point now, I can get into whatever I needed to do. I want to go adjust VLANs. It's very easy for me to go in and say, okay, I need to move one port to another, do whatever I need to do and save it off. So this is one way in which Domotz provides secure remote connectivity through what we call tunneling. There's another feature, let's just leave that page up there, but there's another thing, which is if I'm working with a particular device that uses third-party software, we often see controllers or lighting systems that a manufacturer, while they will have products that sit on the network like controllers, they get programmed with some other third-party software. You can absolutely create direct connections through ports that are required by that software through Domotz. So this is what we call a TCP tunnel. It allows you to do direct communications to that device through a port. As long as you configure the third-party software to see that particular port, it works really, really well. There's another thing which people are more familiar with, but there's beauty in this, and it's what we call VPN on demand. I think most people, as we saw, most people in the poll are managed service providers. I'm quite sure you're familiar with VPNs and virtual private networks and how they work. The nice thing about leveraging Domotz to create a VPN and using the Domotz credentials is because you get to take advantage of the fact that you, as a service provider, can allow your team members that you've associated to Domotz access into a client system in a way that is secure. One, you know which team members have access. They're using their credentials that you've enabled through Domotz, and you can take advantage of things like two-factor authentication, for instance. Because I'm on this webinar, I'm not going to demonstrate us creating a VPN because the clients can often get confused, but you guys can understand how you can take advantage of a VPN client. Domotz will, when you open up this tunnel, will create a secure config file that you can then use on your clients to make that connection there. So that's fundamentally how this VPN on demand works. So with the TCP tunnels, with the secure connectivity, with VPN on demand, you can see how any device that's on that network, and really more importantly, any system that's on that network, can start to be managed. Whether it's a network infrastructure-based system, such as a WAP, firewall, router, switch, or if it's a third-party system that requires configuration, whether it's digital signage, unified communications, voice over IP. In fact, there's a great use case if we go into our office where if we ever need to go in and configure the voice over IP system, it's very easy for us to, through Domotz, create a secure connection directly to a phone that if it was just newly installed, you no longer need to do a truck roll, right? We'll discover that phone on there. You can get directly into the configuration utility. You can set up the parameters as needed, and that phone gets, whether it's a cloud-based service or it's a locally hosted PBX, you can get it connected directly. So we think that this is just a very powerful tool to help you as a service provider do remote connectivity and remote management. And that's just a couple examples. Let's talk about alerting. So there's a couple different ways you can do alerts. In fact, you'll notice within each device, there is the ability to do alerts, but let's talk about the alert settings here. Fundamentally, there are two major groups of alerts. there are network alerts, which is really about what the Domotz agent itself sees on that network. Is it connected to its cloud, or has it lost connection? That's where you get this first connection lost recovered. Are new devices showing up on the network that have not been there before? And should we alert to that? There's this notion of security issues. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means and how we manage that. But then there's also network performance alerts that can happen at a network level. When you look at individual devices, you also can start to look at some details. So when we look at this particular device, we can get alerts on every single device as to whether it's up, when it goes down, if the IP address changes, if a heartbeat gets lost, meaning, for critical devices that must stay on online all the time, you may want to look at a particular heartbeat rather than it going up or down. You can start to monitor TCP services. So looking at, is the web page running? Is RDP, or remote desktop protocol, running on this particular device? And then one question that we always get, especially for service providers who are quite familiar with whether it's Cisco or enterprise grade switches, but it's, can we view SNMP sensors? And the answer is absolutely. So if you want to look at consumables such as ink levels in printers, or if you want to look at temperature or CPU utilization, taking advantage of SNMP sensors is exactly the right way to do that. So you can create a sensor here. I don't know why you would do it on this particular device, but you can go in and configure the type of, the category of the sensor, and then you can enter in the OIDs. One of the things that I think Giancarlo will talk about at the end when we're talking about some of the roadmap items are how we're making this even easier for you to take advantage of these. So talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, will you touch on that at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that.
Good. Then I won't steal your thunder, okay? So now you can see how you can put alerts on the network. You can put alerts on individual devices. Let's talk about the types of alerts that go out there. So first and foremost, you can get alerts as a push notification to your mobile device. So if you're out on another job site and you want to be notified when a particular customer's or a separate client's system goes down or is in a troubled state, push notifications is a great way to do that. You can do standard email notifications. So here you'll notice that I'm logged in under my personal account. Please don't spam me. I don't want to get a lot of spam now, but I'll get emails. If I have a standard alert set up to do an email to my account, it'll go there. But another much more powerful feature is actually what we call shared alerts. Shared alerts, and let's go to the shared alerts configuration page. This is where you can start to do things like push directly into a PSA tool, so a professional services administration tool. We have integrations with ConnectWise. We have integrations with Autotask. You can use tools like Zendesk, great PSA tools that are commonly used. I go back to my comment, if there's a tool or service that you guys use, let us know. We're starting to integrate with Solutions 360. You're going to see that coming soon. Again, these are great ways to, when an alert happens, automatically create a ticket so that you and your team can prioritize and manage that appropriately with your customer base. We can do what's called webhooks. Webhooks are a really powerful way to do cloud-to-cloud communications and proactively push notifications into a third-party service. Systems like Slack, Microsoft Teams are great examples that we have configured here. Even services like Zapier, which will allow you to push a webhook or push an event into their service, and then you can automate what happens, whether it goes to one or multiple tools. So that's another great way. And of course, the last thing with respect to shared alerts is really what we consider to be shared emails or aliases. This is another way in which you can push notifications to a group email list. Maybe in this example, you'll see Robert's support at MailChimp.com, right? For whatever reason, if you want to push a particular alert to that alias, you can do that. Very useful when you're dealing with, again, maybe ticketing systems that we don't have complete integration with, but they can receive email alerts and open up tickets. That gets used a lot. The nice thing as well is you can combine these types of channels. So you can add a PSA tool plus an email, a shared email alert, plus say Microsoft Teams into a single type of alert. And then you can associate the types of events that will occur when these issues happen. One thing I'll point out here, you'll notice device configuration events. This is really going back to that Cisco configuration management. If we see the configuration change, you should get an alert. You can add that to this particular environment here, or if the running and startup configs get out of alignment, you can add an alert there as well. So this ultimately is some of the great ways in which Domotz has made it possible for you to proactively monitor not only the network and the network infrastructure devices, but all the devices and all the systems that are on your clients' networks. I had mentioned before that at a network level, we can do alerts for security, okay, when we look at a particular system. If you look here, and I always keep this like this, we have security issues that are found. A couple of things that I want to mention here about this. We have this network security tab. A few things about this. Domotz is not at this point replacing your SOC, right? A security operations center. We still view ourselves as a network monitoring and management tool, but a critical part of the network is making sure that it's secure. What we do is we look at two different things primarily. One is from our cloud back into the network. Do we see ports that are open at your firewall or your router level? Do we see ports that could potentially be opened to devices on the inside of that network, creating a vulnerability or a security hole? When an alert occurs or when we see that happen, we essentially alert you to say, okay, we discovered this particular port. What do you want to do? Do you want to reject it or accept it? If you accept it as a known vulnerability, the assumption is that the device on the far end of that is secured in a way that you feel comfortable. If you reject it, obviously what you should be doing is going into the firewall or into the router and closing that port and managing it appropriately. We also look from the inside out. So from the agent in, looking back out towards the cloud, we look for UPnP servers. We look for devices that are trying to gain access to the cloud through UPnP. UPnP is a legacy technology, so universal plug and play. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. But it is the easiest way for devices that are put onto a network to gain access to the outside world. In general, I think most of you know this as service providers, UPnP is typically disabled because it is a fairly legacy technology, but you'll be surprised how many systems, especially smaller customers, smaller clients that are dealing with their ISP modem and router, do not turn off UPnP. And so if a device comes in, right, from somebody just purchased a device and they put it on their desk and it's connected to the network, if it looks for UPnP and has a port that goes out, that's a vulnerability. So we want to bring awareness to you as a service provider that's there. You will notice that I have this default passwords on my account. This is something that's in beta right now. Look forward to your comments about this. Basically, for any device that we have what we call drivers for, we can look at whether the device is using the default username and default passwords. If it is, we can bring awareness to you about that. Why is this so important? Well, you can imagine that if a port is open to a device that's using a default username and password, the network that you have just installed or the network that you are monitoring and management has a massive security vulnerability. So we're bringing awareness to you about this so that you can, again, better protect your clients and make sure that any services that you're providing to your clients, you're minimizing risk as much as possible with them. So that's what I wanted to say about network security. The last thing that I want to show here before we get into some of the more custom integrations and capabilities is that of reporting. A lot of service providers that have service level agreements in place with their clients typically the customer knows the job that they're doing, but when it comes to monitoring and management, all of the other systems that are out on the network, we feel that providing you with the ability to generate reports and logs that can go directly to your customer is really valuable. On this particular page, you'll see that we have logging. So anytime somebody accesses the network, usually I have one or two of my colleagues. Here we go, Giancarlo was accessing my network. I hope you were doing something appropriate, Giancarlo, in my network when you did that. But we log it, right? We log the time, the date, and we look at what they did or which device they access and how they access it. Here you'll see Giancarlo access the Domotz box. He went to the TCP port in 22 for whatever reason that he needed to do that. If we access cameras, we'll show you that. All of this is really there to help protect you as a business, better understand what is going on inside the network and who on your team is accessing the network. Now, I want to point out one critical thing here, which is, for instance, just today on this demo, you guys saw me access this particular device, which is a network switch on port 80. Because of our secure encryption, because of the way we do communications between the laptop, the cloud, and the cloud back into that device, we do not know anything about what was changed or what was going on inside that particular device. But at least you have a timestamp of who made the access, what they accessed, and essentially when they access it. So if something does go wrong, you can look back at that. From a reporting perspective, a few things you can do. One is you can generate a manual report, send it off to whichever recipients you care, and you can customize the type of data that gets generated in that report. One of the things that people ask about that I think is useful to know is that you can go into your portal and put in your logo, you can put in your brand, you can put in your information. So you'll notice that this little cool cat logo that I have here is the exact same logo that shows up on this page, right? My knock page. It is also the same logo, and your information will show up in those customized reports. So if you wanted to send that information directly to your client, you absolutely can do that. You also can generate automatic reports. This is something that we added within the last month, which allows you to send out reports automatically on the first of every month with the data that you expect, whether it's important devices or speed tests that's going on at the WAN level, or even information about individual devices, their important status, which new devices are there. The activity log is looking at who has accessed the system. The login and reports page is really powerful. I showed you at the beginning when you're on the devices page how you can export all the devices and use that for inventory, or even for really the purpose at that point is for uploading details about each device in a very quick, rapid way through Excel. But you also can generate a report or an export of all the devices in this section too, which will email out a CSV file with all that content that we showed before. This login and reports tool we think is very handy, especially for service providers that have SLAs in place with their clients, or they want to show that for the money that their client is paying, they're continuously monitoring their systems. So that gives us, that gives you kind of an overview of a lot of the major points within Domotz. Jordan, I think we have another poll that we wanted to just briefly get from customers, based on what we've shown here. Just, what is it that interests you with respect to what we're showing? And again, if there's something else that's in there and you want to make a comment about it that's not on this, let us know, right? We do get a lot of interest in the topology map. We get a lot of interest in the connectivity and the secure connectivity. But while you're filling that out, let me show you a couple things that we do that's very unique from typical remote monitoring platforms. The first thing that I like to show, and we're seeing more and more traction with respect to service providers. Managed service providers typically are dealing with networks of their clients. They're dealing with PCs, laptops, servers, etc. But what they can do with Domotz is start to, in fact, let's go look at the network topology. They can take advantage of this topology page, show this to their client, right? And this is a bit of a large network here, but they can start to zoom in on things and look at the way in which Domotz classifies stuff. So we know which devices are cameras, right? And we can start to show that to you. In fact, if we scroll over here, this is a great way to add a service to your offering that you do with your clients, where you say, hey, look, not only can I manage your networks and PCs, but we notice that you have security cameras. We can make sure that those security cameras are online running 100% of the time. So one of the things that we do is, after we've classified this and you've maybe shown your client all these cameras, we can discover that these are OnViv based cameras. We can look at the protocols, we can see the types of streams that they're looking at, but more importantly, we can actually grab a snapshot directly from that camera. The idea behind this, okay, not only can we tell you that the camera is online, we can do that today just through general network protocols like we do. You can connect to it, of course, but by you having the ability to quickly grab a snapshot, you can see that not only is the camera online, but it's functioning properly, it's pointed in the direction you expect, and it's doing what it should be doing, right? Somebody hasn't covered it with spray paint. This is extremely useful to many customers. I don't think customers realize it, or your clients realize it all the time, but when they install a security system, the worst thing that can happen is that you go to, you have an incident, right? Somebody breaks into a car, there's a slip and fall issue, right, at the front door. You know, look, the worst thing would be, after that incident, you go look at the security footage just to find out that the camera was offline. It's a very expensive mistake. We can help mitigate that. You can help mitigate that by adding these types of services. So we think that this is unique and interesting. It's a great way to build this into reports that you do with customers, your clients. Let's look at another thing. You'll see, I mean, obviously from this particular site, Domotz is heavily invested in audio video solutions. When we look at systems like Wirestorm or Liberty AV, what you see is that we can start to interrogate video distribution systems, things that are used for digital signage, or in retail establishments, sports bars, things like that, gymnasiums. We can look at the video distribution system and we can see over the network which encoders are communicating with which decoders in real time. Very helpful when one of your customers, right, the manager of the sports bar says, hey, look, this TV that's here isn't functioning. What's going on? It must be your network, right? You now, without doing a truck roll, can start to interrogate the various systems and look at a high level to say, well, yeah, you know, this particular Dish Network Joey device isn't talking to that particular TV right now. Let me go in and adjust that, or let me power cycle that. So this is some of the powerful ways that you can use some of the AV capabilities. Another thing that we get asked about all the time, and I do want to show this, is, you know, I've shown you how we, oops, I think I typed it correctly, how we can access and power cycle PoE ports. We also can connect to smart PDUs, so power distribution units, and you can associate devices, whether they're network-based or not. For instance, this projector here is not a network-based device, but we can add it to this port and I can power cycle it. So if I'm having trouble with a classroom, right, and the projector's not working or the AV system's not working, you can remotely monitor remotely manage that by doing a hard power cycle of a device like that. So you can connect to these PDUs and do that type of, you have that type of capability here. So all that being said, these are just some of the key features. We're at about 10 minutes left. We usually leave this time for Q&A, and I want to give time for Giancarlo to talk a little bit about some of the things that you'll see over the next 2, 4, or even 6 weeks. Giancarlo, was there anything that I mentioned or forgot to mention that I should that would help you here?
Not really, but we got some question here around. I mean, most of the question we're answering to your question actually, to which kind of integration the people would like to see on which hardware, and I will cover that one. One guy actually asked for something else, and he was asking if there is any particular integration with voice over IP phones, or if there is any particular use case in that space. It reminds me a similar question from one of two previous webinar, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. In fact, let me do this. Let me go to our page. So in fact, Jordan will appreciate me showing off his marketing page. If anybody wants to go to under the front page, there's a customers tab and case studies. They will see that we have various case studies out there. And I will tell you that from a voice over IP perspective, we actually have a new case study that we'll be putting on the website very soon. You'll probably see it in the next day or two. That was from a company called Select Voice and Data out of Salt Lake, but they integrate really well with voice over IP. And it's actually a really intelligent use case in the school districts and how they use it. So
that's very, very good, GB, and actually to address the question from Andy here on the chat. So as I was mentioning, most of the people were answering to your question about integration, and they were wondering if and when we are going to integrate with companies like Datto, Autotask, and we mentioned that in the Autotask PSA we do already have an integration there, and yes, you're showing that one. However, there might be an integration from an RMM tool, which is the Datto RMM tool. And in that case, we are in contact with the Datto team because it's more integration that goes from their side to Domotz. And other people were asking about integration with Synchro MSP. And in this case, there is a dual integration. So there is a part of integration it's on us, and then part of integration it's on them. We are in contact with their product management. It will be very, very beneficial if you have this kind of request to address also to their team. So the more common users ask both Domotz and Synchro MSP to go integrate better, the sooner this will be achieved, of course.
Yeah. This being said, I wanted to make sure people recognize too on our webpage under the product menu, there's integrations, which you'll see quite a few of the different companies that we integrate, whether it's a hardware or software, but we're always looking to do more. So let us know how we can help you there.
Perfect. And the other integration they were talking about was more on the hardware side. You showed the configuration management tool and versioning of networking devices. That's very awesome. And people are wondering when they can see their firewall brands there. So company like Fortinet or SonicWall. Those brands are definitely in our roadmap. We are trying to achieve the major brands. So we mentioned about Juniper, we mentioned about Cisco, we mentioned about HP, Aruba, Fortinet, and SonicWall. From the firewall point of view, they are on that list to be achieved by the end of the year. Similar other MSP were asking about any kind of integration with WatchGuard. Actually, the WatchGuard team has done a very nice web page. So if you search for WatchGuard and Domotz, you will find a WatchGuard page on how to extract information out of WatchGuard and put those information into Domotz, which kind of cool thing. And again, from the hardware perspective, somebody else was mentioning about Datto, the Datto networking devices. That's also on our plate. So we do have Datto devices in our labs today, and we are investigating how to extract more information there. Don't forget that the Datto, very similar to Cisco Meraki and very similar to Ubiquiti when they have a cloud controller. The Datto devices are controlled to the cloud. So in that case, the integration will be more cloud-to-cloud integration, the same we have done with Cisco Meraki, for instance. So those are basically some of the question that has been posed. I see new question right now. So somebody asking if we do support SMS, so text message to the phones, and what we answer, of course, is that the alerting mechanism to the phone is based on smartphones, and we do push notification through the means of the app. So if you install the app on your mobile phone, you will get the notification directly through the app, which is a sort of new way of text messages, actually. We do not support SMS, by the way. GB, did I forget something?
No, I think those are great, Giancarlo. We could, I do want to talk a little bit about some future stuff that we're doing. Do you mind touching on like searching across agents?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's something that we are willing to show very soon. Actually, willing to put in production very soon. We have a preview probably on here. Yes. Okay. So for whoever is familiar with Domotz so far, Domotz is a multi-tenant software as a service platform where you can go on your own account and you can manage your multiple customers and multiple sites there. But so far, the approach has been more or less vertical, where you need to go into a customer and then into a site and then search for a specific device that you want to modify, edit, or whatever. What we are bringing in a couple of weeks is a way to search across all the sites. So imagine you have hundreds of sites and you want to search for all your Cisco devices across those. You just type Cisco in their search engine, and you have for all the sites, or in Domotz, all the agent, all the Cisco devices there, grouped by agent, or you can group by IP address, you can group whatever. And then from there you can jump into directly to the device, or from the left there was a right bar where you can apply in a way of multi-select. You can apply configuration changes. So you can change the location, you can change the model, you can change the type, but more importantly, you can apply alerts altogether. You can change the community string for SNMP. You can, and you will, in a couple of weeks, also add monitoring to a specific OID through SNMP. And you mentioned something during the presentation, GP. The SNMP monitoring is very important. So service provider can monitor a server for their CPU, for their memory usage, for their disk usage through the mean of the SNMP. The reality is that SNMP is far from being a simple network monitoring protocol, but it's kind of complex. And this complexity is still in Domotz. So we still have a complexity in allowing users to add monitoring through the mean of SNMP. But we are reducing that complexity. So by the end of July, so in a couple of months, let's say, we are adding a way for Domotz to suggest what information are relevant depending on the specific device that you're trying to monitor. So for instance, you have a new NAS drive, and Domotz will suggest you that you can monitor the occupancy of volume XYZ rather than the temperature of that NAS drive and so on. So that's very important to mention as something coming in a few weeks, together with the support for additional versioning of the SNMP. So we do currently support version 2 only, but by the end of June, we will support also the version 3 and the legacy version 1 as well.
Yeah, Giancarlo, I have to say I'm really excited about the ability to search across multiple agents in the single dashboard. I mean, and just so everybody knows, this is actually, I mean, this is right now working across my account. Again, I'm a beta user, so I have access to some of this stuff now, but I think it's real and it's live. And in the next 2 weeks, I think you'll see a button on the left-hand side of your application that gives you the ability to go and manage all these devices across multiple agents. So this is just a really nice tool for service providers.
Perfect. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, it's definitely a very, very good tool. The last thing I want to mention, of course, you mentioned at the beginning the Windows agent, native, what we call native agent, is something that we are proud to bring in production next week. Because the current Windows agent, the one that you can download from the portal, is basically a wrapper around the virtual box or virtual machine, which is hard to install, hard to maintain. Sometimes it doesn't work if there is a virtualization and so on. So we spent multiple man days in developing the native Windows agent, which you can download as beta version from the portal, from the community forum, as JB is showing. And finally, let me remind that our team is continuously improving not only the core platform with the new functionality, but also improving with the new support for end integration. We mentioned the cloud-to-cloud integration with systems like ConnectWise Manage or Synchro MSP. But it is also worth to mention that we are doing a different type of integration with the documentation system as well. So companies like ITU are interested into looking into Domotz, Get Hoodoo, or Rabbit, what's that one? Rabbit Cloud.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there are multiple that are extracting the information out of Domotz. And this is very, from my point of view as a technical guy, this is kind of easy job for them to do. And this is thanks to the public API we make available on our platform.
Oh.
I don't know if you mentioned that already.
Shame on me. I did not mention that. Let's talk about that real quick. So the Domotz application, we do get questions about this from a lot of our more, I guess, larger clients that have the ability to deal with scripting and APIs, or maybe they want to build their own custom portal for their clients. Everything that I showed you today through the Domotz app or even in the web-based interface is based on APIs. In fact, they're based on public APIs that are available to you today. If you go to your portal and go under settings, you can gain access to these public APIs. This allows you to do lots of different things, such as get all the information about the devices that are on a particular agent. You can even grab, there's an API to grab a snapshot from a security camera that you're monitoring. Really nice for being able to generate customized reports that are very unique to you, or build out a dashboard, or build out even an application that leverages the Domotz service.
Yeah, that's very, very important you mentioned that, because there are companies, they have created their own dashboard. There are other companies that they need reporting capability, or even a simple Excel every morning that tells you the temperature of all your fridge in all your restaurants, no? And they've done that. They've done that through Domotz.
Yep.
So very good.
Yep.
Very good. And that's
Excellent.
basically everything. Yeah.
It's basically everything. Yeah. I love it, Giancarlo. We are out of time is the thing I was going to mention. We're about a minute or two over, but I appreciate everybody listening in for the time that we've had. I encourage you to email sales@domotz.com if you have business related questions. If you have technical questions, support@domotz.com is always available. And as I've said a couple times, and even Giancarlo emphasized, we look forward to your feedback. If there are things that you think we should improve on, if there are things that, tools that you think we should integrate with, please let us know, and we will do our best to prioritize those things. Thank you very much for attending. I appreciate your time.